Ribeye steak. The ribeye is cut from the rib section of the cow, between ribs 6 and 12, where the muscle does minimal work and accumulates maximum intramuscular fat. The spinalis dorsi, the cap of meat surrounding the eye of the ribeye, is considered by many butchers to be the single best piece of beef on the entire animal. More marbling than any other common steak cut, more flavor per bite than the leaner cuts that cost more. Professional chefs who cook ribeye at home choose ribeye. The steak they recommend to customers who ask what to order is also ribeye.
Filet mignon. The filet mignon is cut from the tenderloin, a muscle that runs along the spine and does almost no work during the animal's life. The result is the most tender cut on the entire animal. It is also the leanest major steak cut, which means the least flavor. Filet mignon is the most expensive steak on most American steakhouse menus, despite being the least flavorful by fat content. It sells because tenderness is what most people associate with quality. Professional chefs who know better order the ribeye. Customers who want to impress someone order the filet. Both groups are satisfied with their decision.
Tomahawk steak. The tomahawk steak is a ribeye with the entire rib bone left intact, typically 45 to 50 centimeters long, giving it the appearance of the axe it is named after. The bone adds no flavor because it is fully cooked on the outside before heat can penetrate to the marrow. It serves one purpose. When it arrives at a restaurant table, it generates an immediate reaction from every person within viewing distance. Restaurants charge $150 to $400 for a tomahawk. The same meat without the bone costs significantly less. The bone is the most expensive garnish in the steakhouse industry.
New York strip. The New York strip is cut from the short loin, a section of the cow that does moderate work, producing a steak with more flavor than the tenderloin and less fat than the ribeye. It is the compromise steak, landing precisely between the extremes of the filet and the ribeye. Kansas City calls it a Kansas City strip. The naming dispute between New York and Kansas City over the same cut of beef has never been formally resolved. Both cities serve excellent versions. Neither acknowledges that the other's claim has merit. The steak itself is indifferent to the argument.
Prime rib. Prime rib is a large roasted section of beef ribs served by the slice, carved tableside or at a carving station. The name is misleading. Prime refers to the cut, not necessarily the USDA grade. A prime rib at most American steakhouses is choice grade beef, not prime grade. The standing rib roast is cooked low and slow for hours, producing a uniform pink interior surrounded by an herb-crusted exterior. The au jus served alongside is the collected drippings from the roast. Prime rib on a Sunday at an American steakhouse is one of the oldest and most reliable dining traditions in the country.
Wedge salad. The wedge salad is a quarter of an iceberg lettuce head, blue cheese dressing, bacon, tomatoes, and red onion. It requires no preparation skill. The iceberg wedge holds together under the weight of the toppings because of its dense structure, which is the only reason iceberg lettuce exists on steakhouse menus. The wedge salad was considered old-fashioned by food critics for decades. Then, steakhouses stopped apologizing for it, and food media declared it a classic. It has been on American steakhouse menus continuously since the 1950s. A salad that requires no chopping became the most ordered starter at American steakhouses.
Lobster tail. Lobster tail at an American steakhouse is surf and turf in its most formal presentation. The tail is broiled in butter, the meat basted continuously until just cooked through, served split in the shell with clarified butter alongside. Lobster was so abundant along the New England coast in colonial times that servants negotiated limits on how often they were forced to eat it. The same animal that was used as fertilizer in the 17th century became the premium luxury addition to an already premium steak dinner. A lobster tail next to a ribeye communicates something specific about the occasion. Both the diner and the server understand what that is.
Tartare. Tartare is completely raw beef, finely chopped or ground, mixed with capers, onions, mustard, Worcestershire sauce, and a raw egg yolk on top. It has been eaten in France since at least the 19th century. The name comes from a legend that Mongol warriors under Genghis Khan tenderized raw meat under their saddles while riding. Food historians consider this story almost certainly false. What is true is that steak tartare requires the freshest possible beef, handled under strict conditions. Every tartare you have eaten in a reputable restaurant was prepared safely. Everyone that made someone sick was not.
Blooming onion. The blooming onion was invented by Outback Steakhouse in 1988 and has never left the menu because it cannot leave the menu. Removing it would cause a customer revolt.
A single whole onion is cut into over 100 petals without separating the base, battered and deep fried until it opens like a flower. One blooming onion contains over 1,900 calories before the dipping sauce. The dipping sauce adds another 200. Outback sells approximately 40 million blooming onions per year. Food critics have called it excessive, nutritionally irresponsible, and completely impossible to stop eating once started. All three descriptions are accurate simultaneously.
Shrimp cocktail. Shrimp cocktail is a masterclass in American mid-century elegance. Perfected in the legendary steakhouses of Las Vegas and New York, this dish relies entirely on temperature and sharp contrast. Large shrimp are gently poached, then plunged into an ice bath to lock in a firm, crisp bite. Served over crushed ice, their cold sweetness is aggressively cut by a fiery cocktail sauce loaded with horseradish and Worcestershire.
Béarnaise. Béarnaise was invented in 1837 at a restaurant called Le Pavillon Henry IV outside Paris. The chef, Coligny, accidentally over-reduced a tarragon sauce and added egg yolks to save it. The result was named after the Béarn region of France, the birthplace of King Henry IV. The sauce is egg yolks emulsified with clarified butter, finished with tarragon, shallots, and white wine vinegar reduction. It breaks at the wrong temperature and cannot be fixed once it separates. Professional chefs consider it the hardest classic French sauce to execute consistently. A kitchen accident in 1837 became the most technically demanding sauce in Western cooking.
Bone marrow. Bone marrow was peasant food for most of Western history because it required cracking bones that butchers discarded after selling the meat. The marrow itself, a rich fatty substance that produces blood cells in living animals, roasts into a gelatinous butter-like consistency with a flavor more intense than any muscle cut. British chef Fergus Henderson put roasted bone marrow on the menu at St. John Restaurant in London in 1994, and food writers declared it a revelation. Within a decade, it had migrated from butcher scraps to upscale restaurant menus globally. Bone marrow now costs more per gram than the steaks served alongside it.
Surf and turf. Surf and turf, steak paired with lobster or shrimp on the same plate, became an American restaurant staple in the 1960s when both beef and seafood were simultaneously expensive enough to signal luxury, but affordable enough for a special occasion dinner. The combination has no culinary logic. Steak and lobster do not enhance each other. The pairing is purely a status signal. Ordering surf and turf communicated that you could afford both and chose not to choose. It became the default anniversary dinner at American steakhouses and has remained there for 60 years entirely on the strength of that original message. Mac and cheese. Macaroni and cheese is the most consumed comfort food in the United States, and its origin is disputed between Thomas Jefferson and an enslaved cook named James Hemings, who traveled with Jefferson to France and learned French pasta techniques. Jefferson brought a pasta machine back from Europe and served macaroni and cheese at a White House dinner in 1802. Kraft introduced the boxed version in 1937 during the Great Depression and sold 8 million boxes in the first year. Americans now buy over 1 million boxes of Kraft mac and cheese every single day. A dish served at the White House in 1802 became a Depression-era survival food that turned into the most purchased boxed product in American grocery history.
Lava cake. The chocolate lava cake was either invented by French chef Michel Bras in 1981 or by American chef John-George Vongerichten in 1987, depending on which chef's lawyers you ask. Both claim the original. What is not disputed is what happens inside the ramekin. Baking a chocolate cake for precisely the right amount of time sets the exterior while leaving the center completely liquid. 30 seconds too long and it is a brownie. 30 seconds too short and it collapses. The margin for error is smaller than almost any other restaurant dessert. It became the default special occasion dessert in American restaurants in the 1990s and has never left. Controlled failure is the entire technique.
Onion rings. Onion rings and French fries have been competing for the same position on American menus since the 1960s, and the argument about which is better has never been resolved. The first published onion ring recipe appeared in a 1933 Crisco advertisement, making them a product of corporate food marketing rather than culinary tradition. Burger King introduced onion rings nationally in 1975, and they became the default alternative to fries at fast food chains across America. The ongoing debate about onion rings versus fries generates more passionate responses at American restaurants than most political discussions. Both sides have strong opinions. Neither side is changing their position.
Mushroom sauce. Mushroom cream sauce traces to French cuisine, where duxelles, finely chopped mushrooms cooked down until almost dry, formed the base of dozens of classical preparations. The cream version, sautéed mushrooms deglazed with white wine and finished with heavy cream and thyme, became a steakhouse standard in America in the mid-20th century. Mushrooms contain glutamates, the compounds responsible for umami, in concentrations comparable to aged Parmesan and cured meat. This is why mushroom sauce satisfies people who believe they cannot enjoy a meal without meat. The sauce does not pretend to replace anything. It simply delivers the same flavor signals through fungi.
Steak frites. Steak frites, steak with French fries, is the national dish of Belgium, despite being most associated with French bistro cooking. The combination became standardized in Parisian bistros in the late 19th century as a simple, affordable meal that working-class customers could eat quickly. A thin steak, usually hanger or skirt, cooked fast at high heat, served with a pile of fries and a simple sauce, béarnaise, peppercorn, or butter. The dish spread globally through French culinary influence and is now on menus from Buenos Aires to Tokyo. The simplest possible combination of protein and starch became one of the most replicated meals in the world. Loaded baked potato. The baked potato existed for centuries as simple peasant food. The loaded version, topped with sour cream, bacon, cheddar cheese, and chives, was invented in American steakhouses in the 1950s and 1960s as a side dish that could justify a higher menu price. Wendy's introduced the loaded baked potato to fast food in 1983, and it became one of their most iconic menu items for decades. A baked potato costs pennies to produce. A loaded baked potato costs dollars to sell. The toppings are worth more than the potato. American restaurants understood this immediately.
New York cheesecake.
New York cheesecake was invented by accident. In 1872, a New York dairy farmer trying to replicate French Neufchâtel cheese over-enriched his mixture with cream and produced something denser and richer than anything Europe had made. By the 1900s, Jewish delis on the Lower East Side were serving thick slices on every counter in the city. The formula never changed: cream cheese, eggs, sugar, vanilla, and a graham cracker base. No water bath, no gelatin, no shortcuts. Every lighter cheesecake made anywhere in the world exists in apology for not being this one. Blue cheese sauce. Blue cheese sauce is built on mold. The distinctive flavor and blue-green veining of Roquefort, Gorgonzola, and Stilton comes from penicillium mold introduced during aging. The mold produces enzymes that break down fats and proteins into intensely flavored compounds that no other cheese can replicate. Roquefort has been produced in the caves of Cambalu in southern France since at least the 11th century. The European Union protects it with designation of origin status. American blue cheese sauce, crumbled blue cheese mixed with sour cream, mayonnaise, and buttermilk, became the original dipping sauce for buffalo wings in 1964. Buffalo, New York still considers blue cheese the only acceptable accompaniment. They are correct.